Hello everybody, Sunday Adelaja here. I'm back with you today on Reconstructing Nigeria and Nigerians. But this is not just about Nigeria and Nigerians, this is actually about nations. So today I'm going to be talking on the topic, are nations by accident? Are nations by accident? Well, because when it comes to Nigeria, a lot of people are arguing these days and saying that we came together by accident, that our coexistence is coincidental and accidental. But I don't really believe so. I don't believe anything happens in this life, especially when it comes to nations and national foundations or establishment of nations. I don't believe that these kind of things happen by accident. Yes, in the eyes of men, it could be all by accident, but in the eyes of God, nothing is by accident. So I don't believe that Nigeria has come together by accident. I don't believe that our coexistence of over 500 tribes and nations are coincidental or accidental. I don't believe that the fact that the Europeans, God used their greed to divide Africa into smaller nations. I don't believe that that is also accidental. To man, it could be by chance. To man, it could be unexpected. But in the eyes of God, God definitely is behind the formation of nations. Those kind of claims, when you look at it naturally, that are nations coincidental, you could say they are true. But when you look more deeply and you investigate and do your research and do analysis about the circumstances surrounding the formation of such nations, you begin to say that no, you begin to think and know that there are some supernatural, superhuman interference that were guiding and underlining the formation of any nation you see. So Nigeria included, and Africa as a continent included. We could have said it is the Europeans that cut us into pieces and made us into smaller nations. Yes, that is in the natural. But when you come to think about it, you will think that, you will know that, there are plus and minuses. There are pluses and minuses in everything. But you cannot deny the fact that there is a divine hand and a divine intervention on the coming together of those countries that make up a particular nation, especially Nigeria. From my studies on this subject of evolution of nations, I would say that the claim of accident or coincidence for nations is practically impossible. It's non-existent. So, are Nigerians by accident? I think God's hand was in it to make me a Nigerian, being a Yoruba man, to make you a Nigerian, being from another tribe, that it is God that brought us together to form a nation. We should embrace that, and we should thank God for that. Actually, the whole human race, we are a family. We are just one family. Why should we fight and be dividing one another again and be saying we are different? We are a whole human race. We are the same human race. And, if you look at countries, nations, there are over 196 countries. No, there are actually 196 countries all over the world now, or nations in the world today. And I believe that all of them had the hand of God in them. It's impossible to say that they all came together by accident. Yes, some, nations are changing actually every 100 years, nations change their borders and their territories. Some nations disappear, others reappear. But do you think that the hand of God is not in all of this? No, I think the hand of God is in them, even in the appearance of nations and in the disappearance of nations. The question is, what accounts for the formation of these nations? What is it that's responsible for national formations? How do large bodies of different individuals, different races, different tribes, and different ethnic groups who sometimes don't even speak the same language, how do they end up coming together? Either it is even by force. Even if you try to do that by force and by war, it's not always possible, because people will fight one another, they will not understand one another. But for them to come together and actually become a country or a nation, pursuing common goals and interests, that is all by itself already supernatural. Or I might even go further by asking, how were the distinguishing boundaries and culture, value system of these nations determined? And how were they established? Was it all as a result of accident and coincidence or random happening that made people that are totally different, that speak different languages, that maybe had fought for many years among themselves, and now they are one country? So it's more than the natural logical explanation that some colonialists are. Even the colonialists themselves, they are not almighty, they are not all powerful, and they cannot all know what will happen. The colonialists left and the nation still remained together. So even from a purely human perspective, and from a historical or sociological perspective, even political perspective, you will agree, you will see always that the emergence of nations is not by accident. They are not just spontaneous. That there is a superhuman, supernatural interference in how nations come together. And when you also study the subject, you will discover that analysts unanimously believe that the formation of nations is often predated by a series of factors. There are always things that are responsible for it. Sometimes they fight, and sometimes they subject one another. Sometimes one nation dominates the other. Sometimes it is because people are selfish. Most nations of the world are actually, came to be through the selfishness of other people or other nations. Maybe because of war or because of colonialism, not maybe because of subjection of one nation to the other or by the other, but the whole idea is that there are always some factors, events in the natural that bring together nations. And then, as a result of all those events, these countries or nations come together and they put their desires and aspirations into one. They begin to form a common goal and a common purpose that they are pursuing to become one nation. So no matter the circumstances or situations that have brought us together, the most important thing is for us to be able to have common goals, common purpose, common aspirations. Do we all want to live a good life? Yes. Okay, all of us want to live a good life. Do we all want our children to have a better future? Yes, all of us want to have better future. Do we all want to be prosperous? Yes, all of us want to be prosperous. Despite our nationality, our languages, or our differences, let's agree on the things that we all want. And that now will form the basis for the formation of our countries. So, some people believe that nations are founded upon individuals' concerns over distribution of wealth and resources. Some people say, okay, if we are too small, we might not be able to play a huge role in distribution of resources and wealth, because we will not be able to compete with other nations. So let us come together. And that's what we see in European Union. They came together because they saw that they will be able to compete better. They will be able to compete better with America, with Japan, with China. So that's why some nations come together. And now, even in Africa, the African nations are coming together to become African Union. They are removing borders. They are doing open trade. So now it's time that everybody wants to be together. They even want to remove borders. They even want to remove passports. Everything will become one thing. Is it now the time that we want to divide Nigeria when the whole of Africa is uniting together? So it is old concept. The borders and division of people is old concept. We are one people, and we are now realizing that nations are now realizing that boundaries are now being removed, borders are now being removed, the resources are now being distributed across the borders. So everybody wants to live well. This is all, what I've talked about so far is all historical, sociological, anthropological reasons why nations are not by accident. But if I want to talk as a Christian and look at the Bible, if you read in the Bible, in the book of Acts, chapter 15, verse 18, it says, known to God from eternity are all his works. Known to God from eternity are all his works. So everything that happens on the earth, including the formation of nations, are known to God. And he knew what will happen in the countries and nations of the earth from the beginning, even before those countries came to pass. So God conceives nations. If you go to read in other scriptures, you will see that nations are not by, in Acts chapter 17, you will see that nations are not by accidents. They are not by accident and they are not coincidental. God conceives the notion of nations and nationalities from the beginning. And God himself orchestrates the foundation, the formation, and even dispersion and disappearance of nations also. God today still does the same thing. He's the one that orchestrates the emergence and dominance of nations. So if God has brought us together as Africans, let us embrace one another. If God has brought us together as Nigerians, let us embrace one another. God already had the foreknowledge of the fact that we are going to be one people. He had the foreknowledge of our location. He had the foreknowledge of where we're going to be born. And he had the foreknowledge of our character traits and the character trait of our nation. So let us accept it that, yes, events and situations and circumstances might have facilitated our coming together, but really let us now embrace it and say we receive one another, because, you know, it is not, nations are not by accident. Because God himself actively monitors and oversees events in nations, especially when it comes to their formation or dispersion. God could decide the subjugation even of nations, even the extinction of nations. Those are all in the hands of God. Nations also, we know from the scriptures that nations have angels over them. And also they are territorial spirits, demons that are attached to nations. So nations are not just physical, nations are spiritual, and God is behind it. And that's why Satan himself attacks nations. So as Nigerians, let us first of all accept the fact that, yes, there are circumstances that brought us together, but there is divine will behind it. That it's not by accident that we're together. It's not by accident that we're in the same territory, called by the same name, and, you know, and have the same passion and aspirations. Let us now agree on the things that we all desire to have, on our desires, aspirations, purpose, and goals in life. And let us all bring together our passion and work together to the fulfillment of that goal of a better life for our people, for one another, and for our children. So that's why I would not support the disintegration of Nigeria. I would not support the call by some ethnic groups in Nigeria for division. I will not. I think God brought us together and we'll together build a better future. So are nations by accident? I don't think so. God's hand was behind it. Nigeria, God's hands was behind us coming together. And God is the one that made us to be one people for the love of God, church, and nation. Peace.